What is up, and welcome back to Cryptographics. In this video, we're going to be going into TitanX and looking at it as it goes into the deflationary stage coming into November. So let's start with looking at some stats here. Now, if you're unfamiliar, TitanX has had a whole lot of supply that has come out over the last 12 months or so, or 12 to 13, 14 months. So now, though, we're going to an interesting period within TitanX. This right here, this chart that I'm showing you just to the left here, is the amount of supply that is left to come out before, as you can see in December, there's nothing left, right? So by November, we're kind of chilling. We don't have a whole lot of supply coming out by then. The average, or the most supply that's coming out in a given day, is 465 billion. And I mean, if we go up and look at the previous supply numbers that were coming out, I mean, that's absolutely nothing. Like, most days were well above 500, 600 billion. So, or the average was probably around 500 or 600 billion, at least. So if we go back down to this chart here and we look at the supply coming out, we are in a major decline in terms of supply. Now, the question is, what does that mean? Well, there's a number of different things it means and could mean, because really, we don't know exactly how things are going to go. But the one thing we do know is, well, if there's no more supply coming out onto the market, this thing's going to go deflationary. Now, the big question is, when it comes to TitanX, how much is the buy and burn going to use daily, or how much is it going to use per interval that it's set at? Is the buy and burn going to be turned up? We can't predict that. But if the buy and burn remains roughly where it is, we can go and look at the TitanX buy and burn chart here, and we can see that daily at this point, there's around 50K a day, 50 to and currently it's around 40K, because I believe ETH has gone down in value. So its total value it's buying is around 40K, but it's been bouncing between 49, 60, 50, some odd. So if that's the case, and let's say prices were to even just stay right where they are today, we'd be doing 49 to 50 billion per day, reducing this, the supply by 1 trillion tokens roughly every 20 days. Okay, and those are tokens that people are going to have to either buy back on the market or mine again eventually if prices ever come up to a level that makes TitanX conducive to mining. This is going to be really interesting. Now, what we can do is we can go over to the Hyper chart and take a look at what happened over there. Now, Hyper and TitanX are very different in terms of how they are playing out, how they have been used, and how they will act in the future. But if we go to the Hyper chart, we can see that this is day 88 here, this little purple thing I got going on here. This is day 88. If you're looking at the Hyper chart, well, this is interesting, right? You kind of have not what you'd expect, and it's similar to TitanX, where day 88 happened, or day 280 happened, similar to 88, and the price ended up going up here, right? If this is anything like TitanX, I mean, TitanX has a whole lot more volume. It's got a whole lot more participation. The buy and burn has a whole lot more in it. And I mean, there's a whole lot more in the ecosystem that is driven into TitanX. I mean, even the ETH that comes into Hyper in this case goes into TitanX, okay? The Hydra is going to drive demand for TitanX. I mean, all these different protocols, or so many of them, are going to buy up TitanX. DragonX even, when it receives ETH from its payouts, that money goes into TitanX. And this is all going to be happening during this deflationary period, because if we go back and look at the data here, okay, if we look at the supply came out in this shape. So I know it's kind of weird because we have all these numbers here, but you can kind of see this blue kind of curve and all this, the inflation here. But look at the amount of mining that happened initially, right? It was a surge, and then all this mining started to come out afterwards. The mining started really to pick up again around day 21 to day like 40-ish, day 38, and then it kept going. And by which this would have been 32 bars in, we can expect this to be roughly here, somewhere around here, right? So we got October, 30 some odd days in. We're like just barely into November here. So there's no supply really coming out at this point, right? Then people are mining. They're doing short miners, and the supply is coming out here. So you can see there's like a delayed reaction. So what this implies, at least from what I'm seeing, is that for TitanX, we might see something interesting where, price has an opportunity to kind of roam free, so to speak, where it's no longer inhibited by constant daily increase in potential sell pressure, right? So realistically speaking, what we could see with TitanX as Hydra comes out, which compounds Dragon X's ability to take ETH and put it back into TitanX, as Hyper, keeps bringing ETH to be used to buy TitanX, and anything else that either is already working or is going to come out in the next handful of months that's going to pour more ETH buy pressure into TitanX and then into anything else in the ecosystem. This is going to be very interesting to watch. Now, anything can happen because there's a whole lot of supply that's already out there. There's a lot of large players in TitanX, right? And there's a lot of supply actually coming out in the next week or so. So we could see a correction. Maybe it's not quite so drastic. Maybe it's over the next few days or slowly if they want to drag it out, if these sellers want to drag things out. But realistically, the next trajectory, at least from looking at the number of different protocols that are built on top of TitanX and that are driving buy pressure and demand into TitanX, we should see not a straight up. I don't think that's going to happen. I think something, if things go in their best case scenario here, that's the caveat to this all. We should see something where TitanX begins to rise. I mean, there's no supply coming out. The buy and burns can be more effective at deleting supply and reducing sell pressure because once someone sells and once the buy and burn buys it up, they can't sell that same amount again unless they want to buy it back at a higher price, right? So you got to really consider this when it comes to the handful of months. So let's go back to TitanX's data again for a second here. Let's put this here. And if we go back to supply, right, this could go for quite some time. So it really depends on what happens with the price of TitanX here, right? If we're looking at this supply, this can hold us back temporarily, and then we're kind of free roaming into January, May, all that. But the caveat to this is if we go back to TitanX, it depends on the price action of Titan. Because if we go and we look at what the current value of the miners are, well, they're still at negative 38% to do any sort of mining. So the thing to keep in mind is when this rises up to basically delete a zero, right? When this becomes, instead of 0.7, it will be 5 zeros and a 1, the miner ROI will hit 0. Now, I don't know if that will be tempting enough for people to start mining. I think we'll see a little bit of an increase, but that's only for 88-day miners, right? At that point, it still makes more sense if you're betting on playing the game sooner, if you're thinking about this, right? Right now, it makes sense to buy off the market. It does not make sense to mine. Even at 0% ROI, it still potentially makes sense to buy off the market depending on your time horizon of whatever you're trying to do, right? If you're playing for the long haul, then sure, maybe that's still a bet because you have to think of, okay, this is at 0% ROI, meaning I'm not at a loss or a gain if it comes out at this price, but it could go up against or with you and you could increase your position or you could buy. And at that point too, if you just buy, you have the flexibility within that 280 days to make a move. So the only other thing you'd actually have to consider to add into this to make it a complete understanding is that with TitanX, you get T rank, right? And obviously that's going down, but you can factor that into the miners. And if they're at 0% ROI and you're front running the market, you might be able to get a bunch of T rank if you guess right. But the problem is if you guess wrong, well, now you're just stuck waiting 280 days and you might have a negative ROI miner. So there's some risk and there's some reward to that, but it's important to remember the T rank bonus. But the point of what I'm getting to here is there is likely to even be some delay to some degree, right? If price goes up right away to above that threshold, right? And let's say it skyrockets right up, well, we could see miners begin to start to come or to start to be created again. Now, as prices go up and up and up and up, this means that at some point we're going to run into short-term mining coming out, and we will begin to see a bit of a correction similar to what we saw over this period over here, okay? But it all depends on where prices go. If prices are steadily rising, it's going to push the max or the number of the supply that will come out further into the future. So really, it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't think anyone can predict what's going to happen, but I think understanding these variables, you can kind of watch things and watch the prices and start to anticipate where things might go. And this also doesn't take into account, how much people participate in something like Hydra, how much adoption hyper gains, how much users decide to really get into DragonX, or how much of the TitanX goes into the DragonX vault, and how much ETH then comes in, right? Because I mean, if prices go up high enough, miners start again, that's putting ETH into the payouts, which means DragonX is going to get more ETH, which means that ETH is going to go back into buying and burning TitanX, essentially, because you're putting 44.5 of all the ETH, 44.5% of all the ETH that DragonX is going to get into the vault again, which is essentially burning it. So there's a lot of factors here, but really there's a lot of bullish factors that are going on, and all those combined, unless the vast majority of people just decide that they don't think TitanX is going to do well in the long run, I don't see a case for us just trending down anytime soon. We might have a short period here like I was showing you, but I can't see why we don't kind of at least navigate sideways up over this next number of months here. So I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you learned something, and I hope you're seeing what I'm seeing. If you are thinking something completely different, go drop it in the comments below. And if you want to go way deeper than this on everything with TitanX, Hyper, Hydra, DragonX, the whole 9 yards, go ahead and check out my mastermind group. It's extremely limited. We're about half full. There's only about 15 spots available. So go check those, or go check that out while supplies last, or spots last, I should say. And also, if you want one-on-one help, I do that as well, 30-minute or 1-hour coaching calls. And lastly, don't forget to go to TitanXHub.com/premium and go to the link in the description for TitanXHub Premium if you want 10% off of the Mike Dean's created premium side of TitanXHub, which gives you so many analytics that you will need to get ahead in this ecosystem. So go check that out. But anyways, that's enough for me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.